here. We're back with another recording. This one's a little special. This is our first ever live episode that we've ever done. And so we're super excited today to be talking to David Adkin. And David is co-founder of Adalo, which is a great app if you're looking to a tool, if you're looking to build mobile apps, which those are, all kinds of options out there, but Adalo's really slick, allows you to do a lot of really cool things. And so we're super excited to have him with us. And we're not just talking about no code in general. We're talking about a really specific project that David's had working. And so, first of all, welcome, David, Matt, Lacey. So glad we're all.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I just wanted to. Go ahead, Lacey. I'm sorry.
I was just saying we're glad that you're here.
Yeah. Super excited.
Super pumped to finally connect to you guys. I know I told you guys this before, but always listen to the weekly roundups and stuff like that. So excited to do a quick little live one of these. I know we got a longer one to talk about Adalo planned for a little bit later on, but excited to talk about the project.
So you have this mini series that's coming up. It's about the future of no code and what is no code. There's all these different pieces, and you talk to a lot of different people for this. Can you just kind of walk us through what is the project and how did it come about? How'd you get this thing going?
Yeah. So actually, it happened when I actually, this is, pre-COVID, when we were all traveling and life seemed to be at a totally different pace than it is now. So I was actually on an airplane back from New York to St. Louis, where we live, or most of Adalo is. And actually the plane didn't have Wi-Fi, which I didn't realize is like an actual thing that legit planes don't have Wi-Fi. And I happened to not bring my book either, because I was trying to pack light, whatever. So I was basically sitting there for and this whole flight, and I was like, what am I supposed to do? And so I just started thinking I was reflecting a little bit back on the conversations that I had that week. That was at one of the no code summits by Entra and New York. And then I had been talking to some investors, and then also talking to a bunch of my best friends from college, and they all live there. So I had a bunch of different no code conversations that weekend, from investors and high level stuff to people that know no code in the no code space at the summit, to my friends that have no idea what the heck no code is. So it was a different interesting kind of, I think, meta perspective that made me realize everyone's really excited about this, but no code is pretty confusing. And I think it's confusing a little bit because, there's so many different, not just no code tools, but no code, different areas of the no code ecosystem, from websites to automation to apps to voice to games. It was there's always little different pieces of it. So I basically started thinking okay, I'm interested in I had a little bit of an existential moment where I was I don't know if I'm the right person to have all the answers and all these different things to answer the questions. So I was man, it'd be really cool if I just talked to all the different spaces, but more ask them the same set of questions. That way we could compare and contrast. A lot of the great content right now on no code is very much about the product and what you need to build. But I feel no code is finally becoming a legit space. And I was being hey, it'd be great if we kind of maybe organized our thoughts a little bit into the piece. So that was the original inception of what it was. And I didn't really know at the moment what it would turn out to be, or if anybody would even talk to me. So luckily the no code space, the community is great. It's I talked with everyone from Vlad at obviously Webflow, to Wade at Zapier, to Tara Reid, to Ben Tossel, to, even people that maybe are pretty close to us in the space, like Brian, one of the co-founders at DraftBit, to Emily from VoiceFlow, to all these different types of things. And I did a little bit of if you're familiar with A Tribe of Mentors. It's like a book. It's a book by Tim Ferriss. I'd recommend it. It's kind of like a cool little read, especially because you can kind of like go over the place with it, where you can. He basically asked the same set of questions to all these famous people, and it's like, how did you like get your inspiration, or what do you do every morning, and those types of things, and you can kind of like get your own insights from it. So I did a little bit of the same style there for this book, I guess you would call it. Maybe it's like a little bit of a book / video series. So yeah, that's like a general overview. I don't know, I've been talking for a little bit. You guys can chime in here too.
So what's the plan and like the rollout strategy here? Is it going to be like, are you releasing the ebook like email only? Are we going to be able to get it on a website? And this video series, like when is that going to come out as well?
Yeah. So yeah, through the magic of like, definitely credit Webflow for this one. I feel like I was able to create like kind of like what I really wanted Tim Ferriss's book to be, where you can, so it is a website and totally free. Like, you know, I want all the no code people to check it out. And even people that like aren't in no code, like I want them to be able to like figure out what no code is or help them figure out from this as well. But you can either read the individual experts' answers, which have kind of been trimmed down from like the full interviews. And then you can also toggle to see how everybody answered that same question. So it's a little bit of like choose your own adventure style, where maybe you're really interested in that person's answers, but then you're also interested in a few of the questions. You can kind of jump back and forth around, which I'm like particularly kind of excited about. That it's a little bit of like that's like the power of like no code and like this like digital transformation a little bit, where like you can create different products or like different like whole reading experiences than ones that didn't exist before. So that's coming out. Is it tomorrow? No, Thursday, the 14th. And then depending on when you're listening to this, it might already be out. So that'll come out first, where you can read everything. And then the game plan is to have the individual interviews come out, so you can see all the different like experts' full responses throughout May and June. And then part of that is because like I really want to hear your guys. Well, I already actually heard the visual devs team's thoughts, but I meant like the audience that's listening. So like I'm interested in hearing what everybody else has to say about it as well. So we do have like a type form that's embedded into the Webflow, where you can answer the questions yourself, so that then the whole game plan is that at the very end of June, I would try to make like some conclusions that are a little more concrete of like, hey, this is what we all think the definition of no code is in terms of like what's in no code and what's maybe out of no code. And like, hey, this is like what we think this is going to mean for designers. This is what we think this is going to mean for developers. So it's a little bit of like, you can read it and make your own assessment now, but then I'm going to try at the end of June to like make my own, or like not my thoughts, but now like what everybody's thoughts would be from it.
That's awesome. So what do you hope that this becomes in the future? Like, because the space is so new, relatively speaking, so new, like, yeah. I think it's a really excellent resource that we're going to be able to look at for years and years, and, you know, maybe even change and modify, or be interesting to use it as a gauge to see how things change. What do you think about that? Yeah,
definitely. I think that there's a whole series of like predictions in there as well. So I think that'll be interesting for us to like, and that was part of like getting all the interviews at the same time and like getting everyone to predict like, hey, how long do you think before this happens in the no code space? So yeah, I definitely think the hope is that everyone will kind of be able to like agree on some of the things in the no code space from this document. But then, yeah, I'm super interested to see like how this is going to transform. And I definitely don't see it being like a weekly type of, you know, new content that goes into this, but maybe it's, hey, this is the future is no code like 2020. And then like, we'll revisit this, you know, a year from now to see where things have changed and how the no code space is different and what got added to it or taken away from it. Kind of viewing it like maybe an unofficial like leadership, like thought leadership council type of thing, but like trying to keep it community based as well, where like, everyone would have their input on that. Yeah, that's definitely a little bit how I view it. But yeah, super excited to see what things come true and like, and how the no code space evolves.
So it's not necessarily a living doc, but it could be something that's versioned that we see like over time. I also feel like you really got us. So like you have all these great people on here, and we took part in this as well. And I really feel like this is like, I don't know if you've seen the account on Twitter, Freezing Cold Takes, but I feel like you have us queued up for these like really terrible takes like in 2 years. And we're like, by the way, Ben predicted this would happen in 2 years. It hasn't happened. Just so you guys know. Freezing Cold Takes is like this sports Twitter, like where
that's amazing.
Like screenshot all these athletic writers or sports writers, and then when like things don't go that way, they bring it back up. So I feel like you kind of have us all like pegged now for those Freezing Cold Takes.
All right, well, I'll make sure that I celebrate the victories in this, and that we don't mention the cold takes in this.
I think it could be fun though. Like, you want to
I
call me out?
I will call out Ben on any of his cold takes, and I expect him to roast me for mine too.
Yeah, because there definitely are some predictions in there that are like that we'll get to. Like people are like, all right, I think that's like 6 to 12 months away, and it's like, all right, well, we'll find out in 6 to 12 months. But some of them are further out, so it'll be a while before we figure that out.
So, like on that path, like what were some of the? So I'll read some of the questions so people kind of have a feel for like what you're asking. So, chapter 1, it was when did you get into no code? It was kind of a get to know you too, and then what's your definition of no code? Is it no code or no dash code? When do we start calling it no code? All this fun stuff. And then what is, like you mentioned, what does it mean for designers and developers and agencies? So there's a lot of different things here. What were answers that, and tease us a little bit here because we want to know, what were some of the answers that surprised you where you were like, oh, that's interesting?
Yeah, let's see. I was surprised by, there was one question that was like, oh, like, when do you think we'll have more apps built than like PowerPoint or slides presentations and stuff like that? And some people were like, never. And I was like, whoa, that's like, and then other people were like, it's happening right now. And I was like, whoa, we are like really all over the place on a couple of those answers. And I think that a little bit got into it of like, well, what's your definition of like a no code app, right? Where it's like, are a few zaps strung together like enough to count as like something that like, that's, that I guess you consider like an app like type of thing, right? And that speaks a little bit to it. And then I think talking through some of those things where I feel like you're able to get a little more on the same page. Let's see. There were some interesting takes about no code versus low code and whether those things would ever meet up or whether they would like, because right now a little bit low code feels like a little more enterprise focused, whereas no code's not as much enterprise focused at the moment. Some of them, right? Some of the, I would say, parts of no code definitely are, but not all of the platforms. So that was interesting in terms of it being like, well, is it like a, oh God, I don't know the graph term. Is it like the, where they're like not actually doing the hands, like when they're never actually going to meet because like they're both going up to a certain extent, or like, are they actually will meet sometime in functionality where the no code tools get good enough where they have all the enterprise use cases. So then people just start switching to those, or do the low code morph into no code, and that type of thing I think was interesting. It was interesting to hear thoughts on the different, like when the people that were a little more into, like not into apps versus ones that were more into either voice or automation and those types of things, like how that would affect agencies, I think was a different one where it's like, no, I think traditional agencies will continue to stick around versus other ones were a little more of like, oh no, like, freelancers and agencies will really overtake some of those. So I think that I was definitely struck by how much everybody was excited like about like developers in the no code space. I think maybe at first glance, you wouldn't even think developers were even in the no code space. Like if you're just approaching it for the first time, right? I think like we all have been in it enough to know that, but how excited people were for developers in this aspect. So it's interesting messaging for the no code space of like, if we're all in agreement that like, it's better because they can focus on the harder problems or they can do things faster or, like they won't have to rewrite the same types of things. And like, kind of like developers are already going into like just Google searching and copying and pasting some of that stuff. It's like, well, now that stuff will just be like written for them to copy and paste, where they won't even work on those things, right? Like won't have to work on the marketing type of stuff. Where was I going with this? Well, my point was like, I think we aren't doing a good job of like getting that message across. And then the last like super interesting thing was like no space code versus no dash code. That argument is like definitely still real. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Go ahead, Matt. You have a question?
I was just going to ask David what he thought of that one. Where do you? There's only one right answer here in my book. So, where do you lie on this whole no code, no dash code spectrum of answers? Or are you using hashtag no code in like your text too? Because that's like
no, I wasn't using hashtag no code in the text. I feel like that's too Twitter centric, which I love Twitter, but we got to branch out from Twitter sometime in the no code space. So I've like actually changed so many times in the responses and like how I've put together the branding of this for no dash code versus no space code. At the exact moment, I stand in the no dash code camp. That's where I am at the moment, as it makes it a pronoun. But fascinated by the
wrong answers. Yes.
No.
I'm gonna say solidarity, no dash code. We don't even need to hear anymore. You answered
I'm not
correctly.
on no dash code team. I'm on 2 code teams.
I mean, look, we're not always shooting 100%. So
you on our team, that is so true.
Wow. All right.
We're batting over 600. That's the good news. So
what was fascinating though is like, so it's interesting though, because if you take like I would say most people credited Webflow for like galvanizing no code in terms of like the coining the phrase. There were some other answers to that one. And there are other like, I would say origins before no code, but when it wasn't called no code. But the no code conf was no space code, but Vlad was no dash code. So I was fascinated by like, I still feel like it is a little bit moving. I would like at the very end of this in June for us to come to an answer of this argument. But the origins of no code were no space code from the conf. So there is reason and precedent that we should go back to that.
I think, and this is, I wonder from a perspective of when the user is typing it in and they're searching, are they going to always include the space? And would those results not show up? That's why I do too. I mean, I do a combination of it. Like on Twitter, I do the hashtag on, it just depends on what I'm writing for. But that makes me wonder if that's why they did it that way, is so that it shows like a very curated list instead of maybe some stuff that isn't. I don't know.
I'm logging in to write the no code article for Wikipedia right now so I can get it right for everybody. So that way we just set the stage. Everybody will know it's no dash code. So don't worry. I'm taking care of this.
Let's see. Okay, so some other debates. I know that you guys had some debates amongst some of your answers. One of the questions that I had asked, and then I'll let you guys ask me another question because I know you guys want to ask me some. I have to be on record, so I have some cold takes. But anyways, back to what I was going to ask you guys. So, so one of the questions was, when do you think this will really start moving towards like in the education space in terms of colleges and grade school? Obviously, we're seeing it happen there to some extent, right? There are courses that have that offer some of those things, but the point was like, when will that be a little more of like a majority or like, you know, a larger piece of the education puzzle? So where were you guys all on that camp in terms of how many years?
Ben, you go ahead, first. Matt. I just want you to say your opinion, and then I'm going to call it wrong. So
Matt and I don't agree. He's like Conan O'Brien on, you know, in the year 2000, like in the future, like this is going to happen. And, you know, I see like there are a ton of colleges who teach Webflow and other no-code tools right now. Like it's happening now. People are teaching no-code tools as we speak, lots of places, not just like, oh, there's 3 places teaching it. That doesn't count. No, I'm talking like there are a lot of places that are teaching some of these tools. And so I would say, yes, it's happening now.
I don't think okay. It depends on how we define this question. If no code, if we're just saying like, hey, here's like, go build a website for your art portfolio, and they choose Squarespace, like, are we considering that a no code class, or are we going to say like a literal dedicated no code class? Like, I think
Matt, you are literally the co-founder of a visual development school, and you're arguing that it's not here.
No. Look, I'm saying
I don't even know what you're talking about at this point.
I'm saying that a few years ago, when I was in school at OU, which is a decent school, like my marketing class taught for like the best ways to market your company and your product and your brand. The best way to market it is billboard ads and radio advertising. And Facebook ads, which have proven to be like very, very effective, very ROI driven, like that's been around since 2007. So like colleges have not done a really good job at catching up. I think
back in my day, first of all, I just want to second, I want to throw this out here. Like,
it's Oklahoma.
Or whether or not they, yeah, no, that's third.
Stop.
Or,
I will have no Oklahoma shade.
Are we really saying that because they tied billboards?
I do like how both you guys are wearing Oklahoma shirts right now.
Dude, we got you.
That's my alma mater right there. Yeah.
Wait, sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, continue.
No, I was just saying like, because they taught billboards over Facebook ads doesn't mean that no code's not being taught. Like,
sure,
I mean, their advertising practices might be backwards because
the question wasn't when will Oklahoma start teaching no code classes.
I think majority like it just takes so long for colleges to adopt things. I think first we'll see it be adopted in the extracurricular activities like the engineering clubs and things like that, and then it'll start to catch on more so. I think Ben's 100% right. There's probably a ton of schools teaching Webflow now. I think like Nelson was teaching at some place in San Diego, like in some after school type thing. I think it's just like mass adoption. I think we're a few years out. I don't know. What did I say? I said 5 to 7 years. Yeah, that feels right. I would say 5 to 7 years for mass adoption.
You're the co-founder of a visual development school. I just want to reiterate that one more time.
I'm saying I'm not confident in the U.S. education system. That's all I'm saying here. That's why I'm starting a visual development school.
Stop, guy. I can't even listen to this anymore. Okay, so I do want to get David here on the record on some of these.
I know you do.
Predicting the future questions.
And you also asked me this right before, specifically we got on, that you were going to do this, so that I had no time to think about it. Other than, well, I guess I had a lot of time because I was always asking these questions. But
yeah, I was gonna say, but you've heard everybody's answers, so you can kind of
I have heard everybody's answers. So
I would have killed to have been in that position. Okay, so when is it going to be as common to make an app as it is a slide deck?
I think once it moves its way, once no code really moves its way into the enterprise space as much, and I guess I meant like more of like the app side of things, right? There are definitely like, I would say Zapier is in there, and even Webflow for marketing stuff, but maybe I know they're not quite doing, powerful apps in terms of like built quite inside of Webflow just yet. So I think we are 3 years out from that. I'm going to go with 3 years out from that.
I like that.
And I think that's based on the marketing teams who are using, Webflow now, and a bunch of those enterprises start using it. I think it's the side projects that, people are building, or personal things that they're building in Glide and on Adalo and those types of things. I think that will start happening more and more. I think that will cause it to tip over the scales.
This is one of my favorite ones. When will we see a product at the level of popularity like TurboTax? When will we see that built with no code?
I'm going to go with 3 years, and I'm going to call it MakerPad.
Whoa, bold.
Yikes.
I like it. Okay, when will the first product built with no code IPO?
And I guess we're going more like product here and not less like e-commerce-y, just to clarify. So I think those are, you could argue, those are still no code for sure, but I guess maybe the spirit of the question was a little more product based. I think if it's, let's see, for funding purposes, they try to like IPO more in like once you get your first funding from there until like, let's say like 5 to 7 years. So I don't know if that's like quite happened. So I'm going to go with like 7 years.
All right. I like that. So when will global leaders, presidents, politicians start talking about no code?
I think that it's such like a perfect use case for I would say like whatever political situation or situations, political use cases. Ooh, that's weird. Political use cases, just because like, we even say today, like developers tend, and even UX designers tend to like not move into those spaces. So they're often under, right? Like that like Iowa voting app, could have easily been built on it. I remember even there was like some no code competition to like recreate that thing that spun up like right after that happened. So I think it's good use cases for it. And I know there already are some use cases in it, or at least I know from the interviews that there are use cases in that. I'm going to go with 1 year. We're going to go 1 year out from now. We will have some like decent size global leader mention no code.
I love that. So 2 questions you asked of us. And by the way, I got ripped by my own team for answering this question, which was, what's your definition of no code? And when did we start calling it that? Like, who started it?
Okay. My definition is, I don't have a good, I'll come up with a much better, like clearer one, but I'll give you like the essence of it. In the final report, I'll give you a much clearer, like nice quote that you can just take. But right now, it's definitely has to have the aspects of the end product that you produce, or the end thing is solving a problem. So it doesn't necessarily need to be I guess like the end artifact or product is solving some problem that you would have needed to use code, or you could have used code to also solve it, but instead you didn't use code to solve it. So, and the end artifact needs to be digital in some way that itself also uses code. So, and that was like its intended purpose. So like, I guess what I mean by that is things like Microsoft Word or, you know, Adobe Illustrator, right? Like those are producing digital things and I'm like dragging and dropping, but like the end result of that, and like, yeah, well, yes, like it might solve a problem in that, like I'm trying to present something visually. It's in and of itself, like the end artifact is more of like, you would say, a physical thing that got transcribed digitally. Then so like those have the aspect of like you're creating something, but the end artifact is not. And then the other aspect is that it's like you're creating something new to solve a problem with it, right? So I guess like there are other SaaS products that you're not creating. I guess you don't have the flexibility to totally create something that's like brand new with it. You're maybe like in a specific use case and you're like modifying that. Like you didn't think of anything brand new and then go and create it when you're in, let's say like a TurboTax, right? Like, like I'm entering my thing, like it's solving a problem for me. And I'm entering in my things, but I didn't create something new in like the definition of like design where it's like there was a problem and I solved my solution with it and I like invented that. So I think there's those two components a little bit of like the end artifact needs to do something that would have incorporated code, or you could have done it with code as well. And then it is solving a problem and like you're making it, like you're creating it yourself as opposed to using some sort of thing. So then because of that, like I would put like a Shopify's in there and like I would put, you know, all of you know, I guess you'd say like before it was called no code, like, you know, the Squarespaces and those types of things inside of it. It gets a little interesting of like, how much control do you have over those things is like, gets to that part of my definition of like, or are you just using like a template that you can't really make? So like, there's a little bit of fine tuning there of like, I think that's part of the aspect is like how much flexibility you have. So I think I'm like kind of onto something, but I don't have a clear, crisp definition yet until the conclusion report at the end of June.
I love it. At the end of June, we get to hear it. Oh, we have this conversation all the time on our podcast, so I love it. And then the question I got ripped on is who started no code? And you
were like in some 1970 in a way.
Yeah, he like pulled a year
okay,
for some
people.
like Excel on the top of his head.
You know?
Do you not know that in 1979, Dan Bricklin created VisiCalc, which was Excel spreadsheets. Everybody, I tweeted this the other day, and it's funny how much it got tweeted and retweeted and tweeted again, and people are still commenting. I'm still getting DMs about how you want to be great at no code, learn to use a spreadsheet. Like there is so much power there. And spreadsheets to me is really when, you know, it abstracted that away from like, you don't have to write code to do all these functions. You literally just put the values in. You might write a formula or two, but it's going to calculate things for you. So for me, it's like Dan Bricklin, and I think Bob Frankston, but I think Dan Bricklin basically is the one created with like inventor of the spreadsheet, right? And so for me, that's where it all starts. Now, does it embody what we're doing today? No, but like I think that's where the whole journey began, really. So
yeah,
I got ripped for like 20 minutes straight in our Slack channel after it was over. I was like, I'm just turning off Slack.
It was fascinating in that like I am curious to like put together. And I know I've seen some like Medium articles and stuff like this too. Like there are definitely some floating out there that are like a little bit of the history, but like, and I'd like to tie that in like to your saying like the history of, cause like you're basically, we're always abstracting a layer up, right? From like computing if like, and like, that's, I guess it's part of the core of like no code. But I'd be interested to put together like a whole history of like how that abstracting is happening from the dev side. And then also how the like design side is changing as well. Cause like, to me, like that's like a little bit of like those two intersections is like really how like no code, like I think Spark to some extent was like, we're abstractifying. I don't know if that's a word, extracting, like, yeah, it's good. Okay, good.
Making it a word.
We're like, that's always happening on the dev side of things, and languages are getting, coding languages are getting, programming languages are getting better and better. And then the other piece, I think, to the puzzle that's like really made this possible is like design tools have been getting, we've been coming up with, so it's like the tools themselves, as well as like, just like the, I guess I'd say the language of web from a visual standpoint is getting more and more like less of like the wild, wild west where we don't really know what we're doing, to like standardize, like, okay, like on a website, like on the top, like I have my app or my bar of navigation, right? It's like pretty standard now. And you could argue like, well, we should change those things, and you can be innovative and change those things. But I think it's like, it's helpful that those two trends were like kind of coming together. So I'm interested to do like a history of like both of those, going back to like how development is getting abstracted, and how that's like, from what you're talking about, like a spreadsheet was like the first level of abstracting, and then how design tools got better and better over time from like, all the history there. And then like how they met to get to no code. I think there's like a really interesting, like either article or research thing there. But.
And then GeoCities existed, and there was Yahoo Pipes, the first Zapier, and
we did get some Yahoo Pipes references in the answers.
I can believe it. Like,
yeah, Yahoo Pipes was definitely in there.
It's interesting. Well, I love this. I love this whole project. How long have you been working on this? Like, how long have you been putting this together?
Yeah, so it started, I guess, back in February, was when I had the idea and started shooting around the emails to see if anybody would talk with me. And then I had like a couple of them filmed, but then unfortunately, everything with the COVID pandemic, like really took off to the extent that like for a little bit there, like nobody even really wanted to like, talk about, or wasn't passionate to talk about things like this, where it's like, it's more important to focus on your family right now and those types of things. I think we've like reset a little bit, and I think we're all maybe getting used to this. And not to like downplay it still, but I think there was a little bit of reset there, and then to some extent I was like, well, I partially like forced it a little bit, because I was like, well, I have filmed some of them, and if I don't finish it or get the estimates, then like the predictions are all going to be off, because like it has to happen in a certain amount of time for everyone to answer the same questions. So then I picked back up, I guess, in the very end of April, maybe. And then I was looking at dates, and then now I'm finishing it in May.
So if people want to, find this, and so because it releases Thursday, where can people go to get it? Like, should they just go follow the Adalo Twitter account? Like, will that be like, will be prominent on the Adalo website? Like, how will people find it?
Yeah. So it'll definitely be on Adalo Twitter, and then on Adalo websites, and then hopefully, I know a bunch of the other experts who had submitted, answers will be kind of talking about it. And then we are going to launch it on Product Hunt too, just so that, it's another kind of resource there for people to check out as well. So you can check it out in any one of those different places.
Perfect. Well, we're going to drop this. Not only we'll have this on the YouTube channel, but we're also going to drop this as a special bonus episode this week on the day it releases to hopefully help get eyes that direction. So we just want to say thanks for including us. Thanks for coming on and talking to us about this. And for those of you who enjoyed listening to David, don't worry, we're getting him to come back. We've already got a commitment. He's going to come back and talk to us about Adalo specifically, because we have so many questions we want to ask about that as well. So thanks so much for joining us and for hanging out. We've really enjoyed it. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on this, and thanks for being a part of the project and keeping the no code ambassadors. You guys do an amazing job to help spread the community together. I think, it's always different parts of the no code puzzle, from the platforms themselves to the community organizers. And I don't think we all would be moving in this like positive direction without us all working together. And that was definitely something, I noticed from this whole project was I think we all just really want to make this thing work. And, so thanks for supporting.